Well, AP World, here we are again, day two. Although now it's just really not sick notes, now it's just COVID notes. I should be back with you next week. My symptoms aren't bad, um, but uh, but definitely not anything I should be hanging out with you guys to do. So we're going to do another run at these to keep on pace, and yeah, we'll go this approach to it. Okay. So left you off in the Song era in the Song Dynasty in China, and so we are about to head off here. We're staying in China, and we're going to take a look at the role of religion during the Song Dynasty, and especially when we focus in on that term diversity, because we're going to see a lot going on. We talked a lot about Confucianism and Taoism when we were talking about religion in China in Unit Zero, and so this is just going to take us a little bit further. Okay, so we'll do this as best we can. My brain is a little foggy, but hopefully, yeah. I'll probably watch this little video back for myself before I publish it to make sure I'm, you know, not making stuff up. But yeah, let's see what we can do here. First of all, Buddhism. Well, Buddhism really kind of has its roots more in South Asia. It's going to be a faith that makes its way to China, via some of the trade networks, even some of the Silk Road networks that are going to eventually, kind of attach China on toward Southwest Asia, and then on from there to Europe and that sort of thing. And so some of that is, again, what we talked about in Unit Zero, that sometimes along with trade, you get that transference of cultural aspects like religion. And so that's kind of where Buddhism makes its trip from India, South Asia, up into China. Okay, and there's going to be kind of different versions of Buddhism that will come into play in China. So Theravada is the first one there, and this is going to be mainly, maybe not, I shouldn't say China so much, more like kind of like Southeast Asia. Okay, yeah, scratch China, Southeast Asia, and this is one that it's a faith that, and I would say again, there's always that fine line, religion, philosophy, religion, that sort of thing. And with Theravada, a lot of it centers around meditation. There's kind of more of an emphasis on spiritual growth and self-discipline, things like that. Okay, so in terms of kind of little differences in some of the faiths, you have that going on with Theravada Buddhism. All right. The next form of it, there we go, is Mahayana. And this is one that you're going to see a form of, again, of Buddhism that you'll see. Some of it will kind of work its way into China itself. Some of it into what we nowadays recognize as Korea. Okay, and with that one, I guess we talk about spiritual growth being a real center of Mahayana Buddhism. A little bit more almost also kind of service centered, where you're a little bit more focused in on giving back to your community and that sort of thing. Okay, but I think as long as you have that, and like I said, connection in geographically speaking, China, Korea, that'll cover us on that one. Next form of it is Tibetan Buddhism, and this gets its name from geographic location, Tibet, and this is a form of Buddhism that still practiced to this day, and again centers around, very kind of similar to Theravada, a lot of meditation. There's kind of chanting that goes on with Tibetan Buddhism, kind of as part of kind of the ceremonies and the worship itself, but very, very meditation based. All right, and like I said, centered in Tibet. Zen Buddhism. This is an example of what we call a syncretic belief. Okay, And I think that's a term that we discussed last year in AP Hug. Syncretic means that it's blended. And Zen Buddhism is kind of a mix of Buddhism, kind of as it started down in South Asia, and then also Taoism. Okay, and so you kind of put those two together, and that's where we get our Zen Buddhism. And again, another one that is very kind of meditation connected, and one that you're going to find mainly being practiced in China itself. All right. So as far as the role of Buddhism, it's going to, a little bit of like a love-hate relationship in China as it starts to gain in influence and that sort of thing. It is viewed in some parts of China as kind of this like we have in quotes there, a foreign religion. And in some parts of China, there is definitely pushback and kind of pressure for Chinese people to just say no, to this kind of a thing. And so, while it's going to be accepted in some parts of China, just also be aware that there is that resistance to it in other places. Okay. As far as the Song Dynasty goes, here we go. They're going to, they're still going to put the greater emphasis on Confucianism. That's going to be viewed more as, hey, that is, the faith of China. But at the same time, the Song Dynasty isn't going to like lead campaigns against Buddhism or the forms of Buddhism. They tolerate it. But they, given a choice, they're going to push Confucianism. Okay. All right, moving along here. I guess we're gonna kind of stay on religion, and we'll take a look at some other parts here of Asia and get a little bit further here. So in Japan, we already talked about the Shinto faith. And you're going to end up in with Japan that Confucianism will make some inroads into Japan. So will Buddhism. Okay, and then beyond just that aspect of culture, where Japan will become like you've got their multi-faith because you have a little bit of everything going on. We're also going to have there we go. A little bit. I'm not going to go overboard on this, but there will be a little bit. I mean, you got to think about Japan, little kind of island, kind of, kingdom itself, and then huge China, just nearby on the mainland. And so the idea that there's going to be influence coming from China is hard to avoid. And Japan definitely does do, some of that influence does come into play. Art and literature, especially some of the art forms that you see that will grow, kind of like the painting you see there, which is very Japanese. But that's also borrowing heavily from some of the art forms coming out of China. And like I said, the same could be said of some of the literature as well. Okay. Let's see here, to the top. And then where things go very different as far as Japan and China, again, connecting back. And if we want to talk about, some continuity, all right? And so as time is marching on and hold on here just a sec. Sorry, that left that off. Small little coffee fit. That was all. Anyhow, we were talking about continuity, and we talked about the use of feudalism in Japan, even prior to Unit 1. So that's something that's marching on again, sets Japan apart from China. Got some other terminology up there that we'll throw into the mix as well. Bushido is some of you in world studies veterans will recall us learning about that, and kind of straight up definition is way of the warrior. And whether we're talking about the samurai, there is kind of this very military kind of influence that definitely permeates some parts of Japanese society. They're just they're a little bit more of a militant kind of kind of a people, and some of that has to do with the fact that they're this kind of small island country that has to be always can be thinking about defending itself and that sort of thing. The daimyo that you see on here we go the feudal pyramid here up near the top. These are kind of usually kind of like nobles who serve the shoguns and people who that far up the line there. A lot of times they are landowners. They are often the ones who have enough wealth to where they can basically pay to have like almost like a little private army of samurai warriors to protect their kingdom from other nearby kingdoms. Japan does not have any kind of a centralized government at this time, and so it is kind of this feudal system where you have all these little kingdoms that are constantly kind of doing battle with each other for more local control and that sort of thing. Okay. And so that daimyo class, is probably of all the classes the most influential. There's more of them than there are the shoguns or the emperor is just the one at the very top, and definitely the most influential of the classes that are in Japanese feudal society. Okay, so there we go, a little bit with that. Shift you over to Korea, a little bit about Korea. Okay, here we go. We got the geographic picture of it here. So again, Japan. Again, we're that close to China, and again, the influence. But then Korea, basically borders it, and so this is way back before the days before North and South. Korea is just one whole, and definitely is far more influenced by China. Matter of fact. Korea is going to be an example of what we can call a tributary. Okay, not only is Korea heavily influenced by China, but Korea is, while it is still independent, it has a relationship with China where it understands that if it wishes to be independent, that it needs to be very cooperative with China, and every once in a while China will let Korea know that you need to supply us with these goods, with these resources that you have that we need, and as long as you keep those things coming to us, our relationship is good. If you're unable to do that, we may choose to invade and conquer you and just absorb you into a part of China. That is a tributary relationship, and China is going to operate this with a few different areas here in Asia during the Song Dynasty. And some of this is a continuation, again, more continuity to even before the Song Dynasty. And so I think when I talk about that Chinese connection, we can talk about this tributary relationship. We can talk about that there's similarities in the way that Korea runs its culture, its religion. They also, Confucianism and Buddhism both run fairly strong in Korea. And so, you're going to see far more connection between Korea and China in various levels, whether it's political, cultural, that sort of thing. Okay. And then also, you'll have a very strong aristocracy that is operating in Korea. They have their own little aristocracy up there, but one that is also extremely kind of, I guess we could just say, reluctant to want to change. They don't really embrace meritocracy the way that China does. And so things operate a little bit more, in the vein of, it's who you're born to. That's going to get you ahead in life versus your own abilities, that sort of thing. And so the Song Dynasty will have a fairly strong again dynastic leaders, but they still are going to embrace the meritocracy. That is not going to be the case in Korea. Alrighty, and then we'll look down to a little more towards Southeast Asia and Vietnam, which will be another tributary. All right. Of China, and it's going to be kind of the same sort of relationship. Here we go. The Vietnamese will, and this is something that's going to continue to play out through Vietnamese history. right up until into the 20th century, late 20th century. And that is that even though there's going to be that tributary relationship between China and Vietnam, it's going to be a little more troubled between those two because the Vietnamese, given the culture and the geography of Vietnam, which is a little bit more challenging, very, very kind of mountainous, hilly kind of territory, and it creates a tough people. I'm not saying the Koreans aren't tough, but I'm just saying, that the Vietnamese, very, very a little bit more, like it says there, they value the lives and the culture that they have down there, and they are more independence minded, just given the kind of existence that they live for centuries already before we get there, and so that will create a little bit more tension. And sometimes conflict that will break out between the Chinese and the Vietnamese. Never to a point where the Chinese are going to try to, well, hey, we're just going to take you over. Maybe they realized that might be a little bit more of a challenge they want to take on, even given the small size of Vietnam. They know that geography, but there's still going to be definitely a relationship between the two. There's going to be the Vietnamese culturally are going to give much more independence to women, more, I guess, freedom to women. They definitely, they reject things like foot binding and some of those cultural norms. And the Vietnamese also kind of family oriented. Back in China, they kind of go with the idea of an extended family. In other words, family units. It's mom, dad, the kids, it's grandparents. It might be some aunts and uncles, and they all kind of live together. It's that extended family unit. The Vietnamese are much more kind of like what we're used to over here in the United States, what we call a nuclear family, where usually it's going to be the family unit is mom, dad, and kids. And and parents and aunts and uncles are going to live independently in other places. Some of that sort of thing going on. Okay, and let's see, what else do I have here for Vietnam? Oh, village-based. Oh, hold on, got a dog uprising happening. Sorry again for the disruption. Got dogs going a little crazy. All right, So where were we here? Oh my goodness, hold on. There we go. Jeez. Village-based government. So very, very different kind of form of government. We talked about Korea aristocracy. Well, obviously we have dynasty that's kind of running things in China, and then the feudal system in Japan. Very different down in Vietnam. So this concept of village-based government, and so a very, very decentralized government where political powers, basically spread out all over Vietnam, and yeah, again, kind of how we can kind of set apart that part of Asia from some of the other parts that we've talked about. Okay, all right. I think that is about all we need to cover at the moment for Asia and a little bit of South Asia. I think we'll get a little bit more in Southeast Asia here in India later on in this unit. But for now, we're going to shift over to Southwest Asia, aka the Middle East, and Dar al-Islam. All right, that is a term, by the way, that means basically everywhere is Islam. And we last left. We talked about the Abbasid dynasty down in Southwest Asia in Unit 0, and what this is going to, what really kind of sets this empire, because really, that's what they're creating, is this empire. You see that green there on the map, and what really sets it apart from a lot of other, whether it's big countries or kingdoms or empires back during this region or this time frame, is that it's based on faith. That is the driver of this Islamic empire. Whether it's the Abbasid dynasty or what will come afterwards, is that this is a faith that is very driven to grow and to spread itself and to seek converts and sometimes to force converts, that kind of a thing. And so kind of keep that in the back of your mind when we think of Dar al-Islam. That kind of gets that, everywhere is Islam, because they want to spread the faith, and that is what is at the core of their empire. All right. All right, so this first section in here, well, let's go ahead and just jump into this. There we go. All right, so like I said, we had mentioned the Abbasid Empire back during in our Unit 0, and as we are moving into our Unit 1 time frame, it's fairly early on in this time frame actually that that we see the empire that is dealing with all kinds of issues. There are Egyptians. There's Egyptians called Mamluks, Mamluks. I'd be putting this on the whiteboard if I was with you. And these are kind of these slaves that are rising up against the empire, and so some of their land that they control over here in Egypt, you're having kind of like rebellion breaking out, that sort of thing. You also have the Seljuk, Seljuk, Seljuk Turks, rising up against them, and some of them are a little bit more into this region up in here that we're having issues with. And so, some of these are like internal problems where some of the people that they have more or less conquered and taken over are pushing back. We talked about the Crusades, and so you've got the Europeans who've been marching down and doing battle for the Holy Lands, and you've got that going on as well. And then kind of the final straw eventually for the Abbasid Empire is going to be invasions from the east, Mongols, who are going to come invading in and conquer them. So I mean, they're going to end up weakening and eventually collapsing just from all kinds of trouble, internal, external, all of it all together. Okay, and 1258 is usually the year that's associated with kind of the downfall of the Abbasid Empire. That is the year that the Mongols come sweeping in and eventually end up capturing and sacking the city of Baghdad, which was kind of a central point, kind of more or less the capital of Dar al-Islam, that kind of a thing. All right, so 1258. As some historians point out, some of the internal issues, and then the fighting of the Crusades back and forth for many years weakened the empire, and they just they didn't have the wherewithal to be able to withstand those invasions from the Mongols when they showed up. More on the Mongols, by the way, when we get into Unit 2. We'll get a little bit deeper into the whole story of the Mongol Empire, but Unit 2. Trade. All right, so we talk about the Silk Roads, which again were these networks. I'm going to call it networks, okay? Because I mean, really, it's a number of different kinds of roads and trails that are going to connect East Asia across the way here through Central Asia and into Southwest Asia, and so you have that going on already, but you are going to start to see more competition. We're going to start seeing South Asia getting more into the mix, Africa is getting more into the mix, even Southeast Asia getting more into the mix. And so as trade begins to increase in this time frame, you're going to increasingly see Baghdad, which in the early days, Baghdad kind of right in this area here, really was kind of like this main, almost like crossroads where all of these different kinds of trading routes all came together, and this brought a lot of wealth to the Abbasid Empire, to Dar al-Islam. But as you start to see more of these trade routes spreading out all over the place, that's going to take some of that wealth away, and so that's another kind of a pressure that will be kind of leaning in against the Islamic Empire, is just a little bit more spread out in terms of trade. Okay, let's see a little bit about cultural and social life in Dar al-Islam. By the way, that is an awesome hat. Let's see, what do we want to go with on this? All right, there we go. Oh, definitely a lot of achievements that go on here. Matter of fact, we're going to kind of go through a list, and probably by the time I get to the list, I'm looking at the timer. I'm going to probably wind this up. Um, I mean, from what I'm describing up here with these challenges, I mean, you get the picture of, Darul Islam as being fairly politically kind of fragmented, which, I mean, to an extent it is. But the Muslims, and again, just remember, it's a Muslim empire. They are going to achieve so much, especially, in those years before, these challenges just overwhelm it. They're going to kind of go through their own golden age, and very much like the Chinese. I mean, they're going to be kind of like head and shoulders above and beyond what a lot of other parts of the world, known world at that time, are able to do. So, like I said, we'll go through some of those achievements, and then we'll probably call this good. The creation of the House of Wisdom, which this existed in Baghdad, and is going to be eventually will end up being destroyed by the Mongols when they invade. We have no real clear picture or pictures or old drawings or anything of what the House of Wisdom may have looked like. From everything that's been written about it, it was a pretty amazing place where all these Muslim scholars worked together, and they translated old works of the Greeks that were on the verge of just vanishing, of disappearing. It was just kind of like this center of knowledge and learning, and so that big stretch there, it gets that name, the House of Wisdom, and kind of one of those things that brings makes Baghdad so important. Okay, like I said, until the Mongols come in and destroy it. As I talked about translations, there are a lot of historians that believe that when we talk about people like Aristotle and Socrates, all of the greats from the Greek world, there's a lot of people who suggest we never would have known about any of their writings, any of their thinking that has had a lot of influence on Western thinking, Western government. If it had not been for the Muslims, a lot of their works had been pretty much abandoned after the fall of the Greek Empire, once they had been kind of absorbed by the Romans, and it just you had these ancient texts, and it was these Muslim translators in Baghdad that went to work on. Let's break the code on this old language and get these things rewritten into Arabic, and once those translations are done, then they're going to be translated in other languages from there, and and right up to present day, where it's part of the library of our history on the planet, and we have the Muslims to thank for that. Talked already about medicine. As far as back even in Unit 0, we talked about this. We talked about math in Southwest Asia. Again, these are the thinking, the theoretical thinking, some of the practices when it comes to medicine, and even starting to move on into kind of surgical practices, things like that. The idea of using the stars to help determine direction, distance, things like that. I mean, the Muslims, again, they are revolutionary. They are groundbreaking in where they're going with this kind of thinking, far more so than other parts of the world, right? And then poetry and Sufism. The kind of a lot of the poetry of the Muslims is kind of is very influenced by their religious beliefs, and will also make up a big part of some of the libraries in the House of Wisdom, many of which will be lost when it is destroyed, some of which will survive. Sufism is Sufi Islam is, it's an offshoot of Islam. It's much more mystical and this is going to be a smaller, again, we're going to have that split within Islam between the Sunnis and the Shias. It's going to be a much smaller group that are going to break away and practice Sufi Islam. And it's, in a way, it's almost kind of forward thinking. We're going to learn more about some of this when it comes to religious faith a few centuries down the road, especially up in some parts of Europe. Sufism pretty much told its followers that you could have a direct experience with Allah, basically with their God, on your own. That you didn't have to have a religious official, okay? In the Muslim religion, that's called an imam, all right? Kind of what a priest is to us, and well, roughly. And so, we have that understanding that for us who are practicing Catholics, that the priest is kind of they help us to be able to communicate with God. And Sufism is saying, no, you don't need that. You can just go ahead and have that relationship completely, totally by yourself. And so there is a little bit more of that kind of mysticism and a little bit more of that kind of free will that's connected into it. It's a little bit more of a focus on you kind of doing your own introspection about yourself and your relationship with Allah, that sort of thing. And they kind of break away. They look at some of the leaders, whether they are Sufi, or excuse me, whether they are Sunni or Shia. They see all the wealth that they have attached to them, and the Sufi Muslims are a little bit more wanting to, kind of like, you shouldn't really need to be so reliant on that sort of a thing. Okay. All right. I think, I'm going to hit the brakes right there because I'm at 31 minutes, and there we go. I'm really, really hoping, folks, that when we pick this up again, it's going to be because I'm with you and we're going through it together. All right. But hey, this has got us moving into our second section. And so there we are. All right. Hope everyone has a good weekend and all that kind of stuff. And I'll no doubt see you next week. All right. Take care.